Let's get started with our first news. Gilbert Burns recently shared a pretty interesting story during a podcast with Hinato Moano. Burns explained that he actually ran into Khamzat's jiu-jitsu coach and decided to ask him who he thinks would be the toughest matchup and the most deserving contender at middleweight. And according to the coach, the answer is not who most people would expect. Before revealing the name, Burns and Moano gave their thoughts on Nasruddin Imavov's chances against Khamzat. And to put it simply, they don't think he stands much of a chance. On paper, Imavov is a solid fighter with good technical skills, but when you compare him directly to Khamzat, the gap becomes obvious. Burns pointed to Imavov's fight with Sean Strickland as a perfect example. Strickland, who is primarily known as a striker, was still able to take Imavov down without much resistance. If a striker like Strickland can do that, then what happens when someone like Khamzat, with elite wrestling and relentless pressure, gets his hands on him? MMA math doesn't always tell the full story, but in this case, it highlights the clear disadvantage Imavov would be at. To even have a chance against Khamzat, you need elite-level grappling, and that just isn't Imavov's main strength. Burns then went into detail about his conversation with Khamzat's coach. He explained that he asked the coach directly who he thought would be the hardest fight for Khamzat at middleweight. The coach didn't hesitate with his answer. He said RDR. Burns emphasized that the coach has already studied every potential opponent in the division. He's got videos of everyone saved, and he's gone through them in detail. At first, the coach thought Fluffy Anthony Hernandez might be the one to give Khamzat the biggest problems, mainly because of his pace and toughness. But after digging deeper, he realized Fluffy's takedown defense isn't strong enough. Hernandez doesn't gas out, but he also doesn't get up quickly once taken down. Burns pointed out that if you watch the fight between Fluffy and Brendan Allen, you'll see a lot of back-and-forth scrambles, reversals, and positional battles. Against Khamzat, though, those kinds of exchanges simply won't work. Once Khamzat gets on top, he smothers you, controls you, and makes it nearly impossible to recover. That's why, according to the coach, Fluffy isn't the real threat. The real nightmare matchup in his eyes is RDR. Out of everyone at middleweight, he sees RDR as the one with the skill set that could push Khamzat the hardest. But for guys like Imavov, the coach believes it would be an easy fight for Khamzat. In his words, an easy win. Before moving to the next news, we have one quick request for you. We're constantly working on improving our content to earn your love and support. That's why we'd truly appreciate it if you could take just a moment to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Move on to another news. Alex Pereira recently sat down with MMA Junkie to talk about some major topics ahead of his next fight, and from the way he's speaking, it's clear he's fully locked in. After his loss of the belt to Magomed Ankalaev at UFC 313, many wondered how Pereira would respond. Would he take a step back, or would he come back hungrier than ever? According to his camp, the answer is obvious. Pereira is treating this rematch with more focus and intensity than anything he's done before. Over the last few weeks, he's been posting training footage that shows him drilling wrestling defense, sharpening his takedown prevention, and grinding on the mats with serious rounds of preparation. He knows exactly what Ankalaev is going to bring, and he's preparing to counter it with everything he has. The war of words hasn't slowed down either. Ankalaev has been vocal, saying Pereira is done at light heavyweight, that he's past his prime, and that he won't be able to hang with the elite in this division anymore. Pereira, though, fired right back, saying nobody really cares about Ankalaev as champion. In his words, Ankalaev is using his name to get attention because fans don't truly recognize him as the face of the division. Pereira is fully focused on reclaiming what's his. He wants that belt back, and he's determined to prove that he's still one of the most dangerous fighters in the sport. During the interview, Pereira also touched on the idea of moving up to heavyweight in the future. He admitted it was a fun idea at first, especially when John Jones even hinted at the possibility of a showdown. But right now, he made it clear the timing isn't right. His focus is on settling the score with Ankalaev and re-establishing himself as a dominant force at 205. The heavyweight chapter might come later, but only once he's fully accomplished what he set out to do in his current division. Pereira went into detail about his decision to take some time off after UFC 313. He explained, "I needed this rest to recover my body. They'll see that it was the best decision. It wasn't complicated. As soon as I finished that fight, I knew I'd have the immediate rematch. I just needed to let my body heal." He reminded everyone that he had fought 4 times in less than a year, and that schedule had left him banged up and dealing with multiple injuries. Taking a step back wasn't about avoiding competition, it was about making sure he would return stronger and sharper than before. He also dismissed Ankalev's attempts to bait him online, saying, "He uses my name to get attention because nobody really knows he's a champion. I don't reply, retweet, or do anything. I won't give him that platform." Pereira added that he doesn't dwell on the past. He treats every fight as if it's the first time, and for him this rematch is about proving once again that he's the better man. He closed by saying, "I fight for myself first to show I'm better than him. I think the story will be over after this." With Pereira putting in elite-level preparation, the drama with Ankalaev building, and the stakes higher than ever, this rematch is shaping up to be one of the most intriguing fights of 2025. Move on to another news. Islam Makhachev's move up to welterweight has already created one of the most talked about fights of the year, and according to former UFC welterweight title challenger Dan Hardy, he sees the Dagestani star walking away with gold in dramatic fashion. During a recent sit-down with Helen Yee Sports, Hardy broke down the looming matchup between Makachev and JDM, set to headline Madison Square Garden on November 15th, and his prediction was very clear. He believes Islam will finish the reigning welterweight champion in the later stages of the fight. Hardy began by giving respect to JDM's skills, saying he's been impressed by his boxing for a long time. He credited the Australian for his crisp combinations and ability to keep pressure on opponents. But in Hardy's view, Islam is moving up at the perfect time. The weight cut to lightweight was taking a toll on his body, and now that he doesn't have to drain himself to make 155, Hardy expects him to be far stronger, healthier, and more dangerous at 170. "I don't think Islam can stay healthy in lightweight any longer," Hardy said. "This move allows him to grow into his frame, and the power he's going to bring at welterweight will be on another level." Hardy predicted that the striking exchanges could start off relatively even, with a 50-50 trade on the feet. He noted that JDM's boxing is sharp, but Islam's kicking game could give him a slight edge in those moments. However, where Hardy sees the fight being decided is in the grappling. Once Islam gets his hands on JDM, the wrestling and ground control will take over. Hardy expects the pressure to build through the middle rounds until eventually in the championship stages, Makachev locks in a submission to claim his second world title. For Hardy, the all-round skill set of Islam is simply too much for anyone to handle. But while Hardy leans strongly toward Makachev, another former UFC welterweight, Jake Ellenberger, offered a slightly different perspective in his own interview with Bloody Elbow. Ellenberger agreed that Islam is a tough man to bet against, but he wasn't ruling out JDM entirely. "That's a fun one," Ellenberger said. "With Islam moving up a weight class, it changes the story a little bit. On paper, the guy is incredible, but at the highest level, it always comes down to strategy." Ellenberger emphasized that success at the championship level isn't always about who's the stronger fighter or the better technician, but who can build the right strategy and implement it in real time. He admitted he still leans toward Islam to win, but he pointed out there are plenty of ways Jack can win if he approaches the fight correctly. In his eyes, the key for JDM is to not get drawn into Islam's game plan, to keep it standing as much as possible, and to land the kind of damaging shots that can change the fight instantly. At the end of the day, both veterans recognize the magnitude of this matchup. Hardy sees Islam's move to welterweight as the beginning of something historic, potentially cementing him as one of the rare two-division champions. Ellenberger, while acknowledging that likelihood, still leaves the door open for the reigning champion to spoil those plans if he plays his cards right. With two strong perspectives from respected former fighters, the anticipation for this clash at Madison Square Garden only grows. Move on to another news. Ilia, the undefeated Spanish champion of Georgian descent, has made it clear that fans will have to wait a little longer before knowing who his next opponent will be. Fresh off his spectacular knockout victory over Charles Oliveira at UFC 317 in June, where he captured the lightweight crown, Ilia is now in the middle of discussions with the UFC about his next title defense. But for those expecting names like Arman, Justin Gaethje, or Paddy Pimblett to be in the mix, the champion himself has already ruled them out. Speaking in an interview with Bloody Elbow, Ilia explained the situation surrounding his next fight. He said, "Well, I have no idea at all when I will defend my title. The truth is we are in negotiations. We are in the middle of negotiating everything, adjusting the schedule for the remaining part of the year or next year, so I can't give you a specific answer. Arman Gaethje or Pimblett? At this time, none of them." Those comments immediately shut down much of the speculation that had been swirling since he claimed the belt. Ilia's win over Oliveira sent shockwaves through the division. To claim the title in such dominant fashion, knocking out a former champion in the very first round, solidified his reputation as a finisher and a future superstar. That victory pushed his undefeated record to a flawless 17-0, and with every fight, he continues to prove that he belongs at the very top of the sport. Fans have been desperate to see who the UFC will match him with next, but from the champion's perspective, nothing is confirmed yet. By dismissing Arman, Gaethje, and Pimblet, Ilia sent a clear message that he's not just taking any fight the promotion throws his way. Arman has been considered one of the most dangerous contenders at lightweight with his relentless wrestling and improving striking, but Ilia doesn't see him as the next challenger. Gaethje, with his reputation as a brawler and knockout artist, has always been a fan favorite, yet the champion doesn't believe he's in line right now either. And Pimblet, though he has a growing fan base and plenty of hype, is still far from the level needed to challenge for the belt, according to Ilia's comments. This leaves the lightweight division in an interesting spot. Fighters are jockeying for position, calling out the undefeated champion, and trying to make their case for a title shot. But Ilia is holding his ground, waiting for negotiations to play out, and focusing only on what makes the most sense for his career and legacy. He's not just here to defend the belt once or twice, he's here to build a reign of dominance. As things stand, fans will have to remain patient. The undefeated champion has made it clear that his next opponent has not yet been decided, and the names most expected to see Arman, Gaethje, and Pimblet are off the table for now. What is certain is that whoever gets the call will be stepping into the cage with one of the most confident and dangerous fighters in the sport today. Ilia is on a mission to not just defend his belt but to leave no doubt that he's the best lightweight in the world. Move on to another news. Bo Nickal has made it clear that he sees a path to victory if he ever steps inside the octagon against Khamzat. The 29-year-old, who recently suffered the first loss of his MMA career back in May, is now gearing up for a big return with hopes of securing a fight on the highly anticipated White House card next year. That event, already promised by US President Donald Trump, could be the stage where Nickal sets himself up for a monumental clash, and in his mind, Khamzat is the man to beat. Khamzat, fresh off a dominant performance over Du Plessis at UFC 319, is riding high as the new middleweight champion. He outpointed Du Plessis in a 5-round battle that was nothing short of one-sided, showcasing relentless wrestling pressure and suffocating control. Over the course of 25 minutes, Khamzat racked up more than 21 minutes of ground control, setting a UFC record for the middleweight division. It was the kind of performance that cemented his place as one of the most dangerous grapplers in the sport today. But despite that, Nickal believes he is built to be the one fighter who can truly test Khamzat. As a 3-time NCAA Division I wrestling champion, Nickal sees himself as uniquely prepared for this challenge. He respects what Khamzat has done, but he's convinced that there are holes in his game that he can exploit. According to Nickal, Khamzat's approach is powerful, but not flawless, and if he gets the chance, he intends to prove that to the world. Nickal spoke with confidence about his blueprint, explaining that his own wrestling pedigree combined with his evolving MMA skill set would make him a far tougher matchup than anyone Khamzat has faced so far. While Du Plessis is known for toughness and striking ability, he wasn't able to keep Khamzat off him. Nickal, on the other hand, believes his grappling is on another level entirely, and that his ability to scramble, reverse positions, and create offensive opportunities would force Khamzat into situations he hasn't been tested in before. Even with the setback of his first loss, Nickal remains motivated and determined. He sees his journey not as a stumble but as a step in the learning process toward becoming a UFC champion. Watching Khamzat dominate and rise to the top has only fueled his confidence. He doesn't just want to compete with the best, he wants to be the best, and in his mind that means taking out Khamzat. For Bo Nickal, the message is simple. He sees holes, he sees a blueprint, and he sees himself as the man who can one day take Khamzat's crown. Move on to another news. Conor in his prime was something truly special, and few people know that better than Artem Lobov. Despite their well-documented fallout, Lobov still holds a great deal of respect for the abilities of his former friend and training partner. In a recent interview with Jordan Ellis for Bloody Elbow, Lobov gave his take on a potential clash between prime Conor and the current lightweight king Ilia. According to him, the version of Conor at his very best would have been too much for anyone, even for someone as dangerous as Ilia. Lobov is preparing for his own return to combat sports after more than 4 years away, set to face his longtime rival Zubaira Tukhugov at PFL Champions Series 2 on October 3rd in a catchweight bout at 165 pounds. But in the lead-up, he didn't shy away from sharing his thoughts on the sport's biggest names. When the conversation turned to the idea of prime Conor against Ilia, Lobov was both complimentary and honest. He admitted that he's a massive fan of Ilia, praising his fearless style, his striking, and his wrestling. Lobov made it clear that Ilia is right at the very top of the game. However, he still insisted that prime Conor was on another level. In his words, Conor was untouchable in that period. He described what it was like to witness those training sessions firsthand. Conor would go round after round with fresh opponents, including Lobov himself, and take them all out one by one. According to Lobov, Conor wasn't even breathing heavily by the end. He was sharp, lethal, and efficient. Lobov said simply, he was a killer in his prime. For Lobov, the difference came down to that intangible aura Conor carried. He had a unique combination of confidence, precision, and power that separated him from everyone else. Ilia, in Lobov's eyes, is an incredible champion, aggressive, fearless, and technically sound, but prime Conor, according to Lobov, still edges it. It's rare to hear someone who once had a public fallout with Conor still give him that level of respect, but Lobov has always been candid. He may be gearing up for his own fight now, but when reflecting on what Conor once was, there was no hesitation. To him, watching Conor in his prime was like watching something unstoppable, a force that could not be matched, and that memory still holds strong even today.